Plastic bars tryna copy my steel. Copy my steel. Face the fact that ain't no cap, I'm real. Ain't no cap, I'm real. Plastic bars tryna copy my steel.
From the ESPN studios in Bakersfield, California, it's the Early Bird Special, bringing you the best stories from the world of sports and sports entertainment. Now, here are your hosts, Sparky and Burdick.
Well, good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy St. Patty's Day, Mr. Burdick.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Go kiss an Irishman.
Yes. Happy birthday, Pops. It's my dad's birthday. And we are brought to you by the law offices of Kyle Jones, if you just didn't hear that spot. The Well Comedy Club, Wooddale Meat Market, Moneywise Wealth Management, Fusion Home Services, and Two Goats and the Goose. A big shout out to Moneywise as they are dealing with Mr. Garrow Ellis, who had a stroke a couple weeks ago. I believe it was actually last Wednesday, so it's been a little over a week. He is breathing on his own. He is taking those positive steps to get better. So big prayers and love to my brother G Money. We got a busy show this weekend. And thanks to NCAA basketball, we get an extra 45 minutes this morning as we have a basketball game going in and starting at 9:45. So we will get into that a little bit later. Condors. We always start out with the Condors and the Runners. Condors split a 2-game series Tuesday and Wednesday at Abbotsford and then won a big game last night, which I believe was Star Wars night.
It was. Yeah, I'm actually very disappointed I didn't get to go for Star Wars night.
Of course. You're one of those Star Wars guys?
Well, duh.
Oh, gosh.
It's Star Wars. What, are you Star Trekkie?
No, I don't like either one of them.
Oh, okay.
So I give Hop all the crap all the time. It's Star Wars is Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever.
You got to appreciate the absolute cinematic masterpiece, man.
I liked the originals, but after they started spinning off and then Disney bought them, I couldn't do it. But like I said, the Condors won a big game last night against Ontario, 4-0. They'll travel to take on the Reign, I believe that's Calgary, in a 2-game series Tuesday and Wednesday night. And then over to the Runners men's basketball team, who squeezed into the Big West Conference tournament but fell short in the first round, losing to UC Riverside 78-83 Wednesday night, ending their season and hearing last week that the CSUB women's basketball team will be moving on from Coach McCall. I'm wondering, like I've said in the last few shows, I'm wondering if that will be doing the same thing on the men's side. I love Coach Barnes. I've said it over and over on this show, but I think it's about that time to get some younger blood in there.
It's time for the changing of the guard. I agree, but and first and foremost, Greg McCaw, my first ever collegiate interview. Great man, his entire family, all absolute athletes and dogs on the court. He will find another job either here locally or another college somewhere. He is not going to be a free agent coach, as we would call him, very long, I don't believe. But I feel like Rod has a little bit more pull than Greg did. Rod's been there a little bit longer. I do agree with you, though. It's time for the changing of the guard. I mean, we had a solid showing in the first half. CSUB was up 44-33. They had the game absolutely won. Excuse me.
Was it defense or?
Well, yes. Actually, what killed them was free throws. Because if you look at the statistics here, and I wrote them all down. Now, first off, let's give his flowers to the guy who's been there all year long and been the number one guy for CSUB all year long, because Caleb Higgins showed up to play again. The senior guard scored 35 points and 5 assists. That's really good for college. I think people who watch basketball or at least watch the NBA game are kind of spoiled in a way because they believe that star players should score in the 30-point range. But in college, that doesn't happen often at all. And this is one game that you have to give this kid credit for. CSUB shot 73% in the first half. The second half, they shot 40%. That's not terrible. It's a significant drop, but it's not terrible. Where they excelled was at the line, which is also something that they struggled at all year, and they actually showed up to play. From 3-point line, they shot well. They went 5 for 12. It all worked out well offensively. What killed them were the fouls in the second half, where they gave Riverside 28 total free throws.
In the second half?
In the second half alone,
Jesus.
And they made 19 of them. Now, and Riverside, mind you, shot 5 of 10 from 3 in the second half too, which isn't great, obviously. But the fouls, when you had 3 starters, 4 players in foul trouble at the end of this game for CSUB. 3 of them were starters, including Caleb Higgins. That's not winning basketball, obviously. No. It accumulated to a huge 50-point second half for Riverside, and Riverside ran with it. But the biggest story out of this Big West tournament that I think we need to highlight was the winner of the tournament was Long Beach State. Why I say this is an interesting story is because Long Beach State, before this tournament started, told their head coach he is fired. He will not be coming back. Now what do you do?
Yeah.
Because not only do they get an automatic bid into the March Madness tournament, which means his season will continue, but are you really going to part ways with the coach that led your
into the
tournament and won it over some great teams too? Long Beach deserves their win, deserves to be in, and I think this coach deserves at least another talking to. But if you're not, I mean, he at least solidified himself at a better college here in the next year and a half.
So is it there one or two team? Only one team gets into the March Madness, right?
Well, no. For the tournaments, yes. That is usually how it goes. Most tournaments are automatic qualifying wins, which means they will be in the tournament. So you will see Long Beach State most likely as a lower seed, I would assume, probably like a 10, somewhere in that area. I do believe, though, depending on how strong their strength of schedule is, you'll probably still see Irvine in there somewhere as well. It really just depends on how the strength looks throughout the rest of the country, which we'll get to here in a little bit.
So who did? Do you know who Long Beach went through?
I can look that up.
I believe they had got through Irvine, but and just keeping it local as a side note, Bakersfield High School named Coach Shahi the new head football coach for the Drillers. Shahi took over as an interim coach earlier this year. And I'm excited to see more. Drillers are always been the big team here in town, but I'm looking forward to Coach. He's an awesome dude. I have a few friends that have kids that play at BHS, but no. Back to the Big West.
So Long Beach went through Riverside, the team that beat CSUB. So they would have had to play CSUB if we would have held out and actually won that game. But unfortunately, fouls led to what they led to, and we'll get to the end of that later. They also beat the number 1 ranked Irvine and the number 2 ranked UC Davis. Ooh. So, just looking at it this way, I think that deserves an obviously for them to get into the March Madness tournament. But now you got to talk to the coach.
Not going to play it off like they just put a fire in there.
Exactly. I feel like somebody's going to sit there. See, we were just trying to motivate you, coach. We're trying to motivate your players and let them know. No, you were going to fire this man. And you know what? If I'm this coach and they try to turn around and come back to you and say, hey, you'd be like, no, I'm already looking for new employment. You already told me my contract is void. I am out, baby.
That guy's going to get some opportunities, especially after this.
If he got through this, I guarantee you he gets a head coaching job somewhere else, if not within the conference. Because if I'm one of these guys in the Big West and I just saw the winning coach bust through the top 2 seeds to get there and win, I'm going to call him. If I'm one of the lower teams in this conference right now that needs a head coach or is looking for somebody to maybe turn around your program, this might be a good choice. But we'll see what we will see. But as we said, I had no news on CSUB's front in the area of moving head coach Rod Barnes. I don't believe we will.
I think it's coming.
We'll see in the next weeks. I don't know. I think that obviously looking at the past couple years, Rod's record doesn't look great. And as we've said on this show multiple times, we love Rod Barnes. We are lucky to have Rod Barnes in this community. Yeah. But I do have to agree with you, and I said this on the Scott Cox show, the First Lurk with Scott Cox on Friday with JR Flores.
Better get it right.
I don't know. Like he's listening right now. He might be stringing rackets. Who knows what that man's doing today. No, me and JR Flores both talked about it, the guest host. And it's, as we agree with you, it's just kind of time for the changing of the guard. It's not that he's a bad coach at all. He's a great coach, but just in the wrong era, in the wrong situation. We need somebody that's going to turn this organization into a more modern basketball look. And I don't know who that's going to be, or if that coach is even in the community, or if we're going to have to go fish for one. I guess we'll see how the women's side wraps up with Greg McCall now out, and they're having to look for the job there. But
I mean, they had a rough season too. So
they did. They had a very rough season.
But they
I'd
lost
argue,
the last 6 games, and
I would also argue though that Greg McCall had better seasons the last 2 to 3 years with less on his team than Rod did.
Yeah.
And granted, Rod, injuries and all that happen. You can't account for those, but that's also life, and that's also the game of basketball, man.
Well, we'll use this to bridge over to NCAA March Madness, which today is Selection Sunday. Not only is it St. Patty's Day, but I believe after a couple games this morning on ESPN around 3 o'clock, Selection Sunday will be live right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM.
Welcome back to the Early Bird Special on ESPN Bakersfield, where you can text in anytime at 661-842-2000. And we do have some Wooddale Meat Market gift cards to give away if you have something good to say or bad. I don't care. Either way. And a big shout out to my teddy bear Hop.
Let's do that today. The best text message of the day, whether it be good or bad, if you could get any kind of rile out of us. And it's an easy one to get today because if anybody knows me,
there's a Falcon fan in here.
Quickest way to get under my skin today. But the best text message of the day will end up with a Wooddale Meat Market gift card.
And check out our Facebook and Instagram, where we always have some giveaways or some crazy posts going out at the Early Bird Special. And, later today, like I had mentioned, the Selection Sunday landed on St. Patty's Day. So if you're not too faded, you can watch Selection Sunday or hear it right here on ESPN Bakersfield, kicking off at 3 p.m.
Pretty sure everybody celebrated probably last night, or if you were smart, you did.
Yeah.
Unless you got Monday off. You got Monday off, and you're headed out to the Honor Flight Golf Tournament.
Is that Monday?
That is Monday at Bakersfield Country Club. Come on out if you want to go check out and give some donations to our veterans here in Kern County as we try to send them off on Honor Flight to Washington, D.C. to go see their memorials. So that is tomorrow at Bakersfield Country Club, the Honor Flight Open, the second annual, if I'm not mistaken.
Couldn't have picked a better nonprofit.
Absolutely.
So it's March, which means it's March Madness time.
Yep. Now
I know the favorites, and I know a couple of the kind of sleepers, but no one really knows.
No.
That's why it's madness.
And that's kind of the difficult part of talking about this today, especially on Selection Sunday, is we can sit here and speculate who's going to be in what seed and who they're going to play the first. We don't know. It's all going to be up in the air until we figure that out tonight. But I am with you. I know of at least the favorites to be the number 1 and number 2 seeds. And we actually had some shakeups yesterday that could potentially rock the rankings here. Because I don't know about you or what you have seen, but my top seeds that I'm predicting to be number 1s this year for the men's side is going to be Purdue, UConn, Tennessee, and North Carolina. I'm going to have Houston as a number 2 seed, along with Arizona, Creighton, and most likely either Duke or Marquette. I think end up being the number 2 seeds. I think Marquette more likely just because they made the championship of their conference. They ended up losing, but they still made it. And they lost to UConn. So it's kind of hard to really say they were going to win that game in the first place. But the big shakeups from yesterday and why I have teams like Houston as my number 2. Houston got blown out yesterday in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State. They lost 69-41.
Ouch.
And they really showed their behind on how you can beat Houston. I'll get to that in a second because I do have breakdowns for that as well. And all in all, I'm going to say, because, you could argue that North Carolina also lost to NC State, although closer is still somewhat of a bigger loss because NC State was unranked. So that might knock them down to a number 2 seed as well and keep Houston there. Personally, I think the committee is just going to see North Carolina as the bigger haul. And I know they've given a lot of love to Houston the last couple years because they've been a number 1 seed, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years, I want to say.
I know, at least 2.
At least 2. Yeah, but I mean, like I said, it's all up in the air. I mean, what have you seen? Have you seen?
I mean, I'm looking at the Vegas odds and the favorites, and they have UConn at 1, Houston at 2, Purdue, then Arizona and North Carolina.
Arizona, I don't think will sneak in as a number 1 seed, though, only because the Pac-12 this year wasn't as competitive as people originally believed. USC and UCLA both kind of, they went lackluster, especially USC with all the star-studded freshmen that they had. And we can get onto the Bronny situation later.
I was just going to say, you said it.
I mean, I'm going to say this right now. People need to get off this kid.
Yes.
People need to leave this kid alone. He's not his dad. He ain't his daddy. And not to mention, did we all forget this kid almost died before the season even started?
I heard Hop on Kerr's show a week or 2 ago, and he was saying the same thing.
Yes.
Like, just
leave
stop.
him alone. And the people blaming LeBron, saying LeBron started this. Okay. LeVar Ball, what was it, 7 years ago? Something of that nature, 8 years ago, when his first son was coming into the NBA, somehow talked all of you people into believing he was going to be the next big point guard for the Lakers. I don't think any of you get to sit there and talk about LeBron talking up his son.
Yeah.
Let's leave that alone, too. It's a father-son relationship. Of course he's going to talk up his son. Leave them alone. Leave the Jameses alone, man. Like, you could talk about LeBron's play all you want, but as a father, you're really going to try to put ink on this man's ledger as a father. Like, that's the one thing about LeBron James no one can talk about is his outside life is squeaky clean and always has been.
There was another father and son thing I read right before the show started, but...
Well, let's talk about, if we're going to talk father and sons on USC, where's Dennis Rodman? DJ's on the team. He may have started, but where's Dennis?
Right?
He don't look like his daddy. We don't talk about that.
Rodman didn't look like Rodman in the beginning, so give him a couple years.
Matter. That's the point, though. These guys aren't the genetic freak that LeBron James is.
Yeah.
You got to take it man by man. And personally, and I know Bronny has no reason to listen to this show, probably has no care in the world about my opinion.
Listening.
I say stay, dude. What's going to hurt you to stay 2 or 3 years under a coach that's a great defensive-minded coach? You could turn around USC's program in basketball, and you can leave LA as a champ and as the player developed that you want to be, and stop with it. Like, I think people just need to stop with this whole one-and-done thing because it rarely ever works out. When have we ever seen a one-and-done player that's actually worked?
I mean, he's not to be hateful. I'm not a big LeBron fan, but
LeBron
that has
was a high
nothing to do with
schooler,
his
though.
boy. But I don't think Bronny's NBA talent.
Not yet.
Not yet.
He could be.
But he's not somebody that's like, oh, my gosh.
No, but forcing this kid into the draft because media wants it is the worst idea in the world because you're not going to get the developed product you want and what he wants for his life. Not to mention, again, the kid just almost died at the beginning of the season because of a heart condition. Why on earth are we putting more stress on him?
Rushing him.
Calm down. Let him develop as himself.
And I did have a question come in. Are you, I know the Caitlin Clark and the NCAA with the women's tourney. Is that something, I mean.
The women's side's going to be very, very competitive this year.
You think it'll be better?
Than the men's side? Probably, actually. I'd argue yes. And actually, it's a great transition because I was just about to bring up that the USC women's team, led by their star freshman, Juju, is going to probably be a number 1 seed today. And they are the team to beat on at least the West Coast side of all this. Because if you want to look at the women's side, we got South Carolina, who everyone's talked about because they're undefeated, and they had a actual fight with LSU the other day, which I thought was great.
That was hilarious.
Iowa, our girl Caitlin Clark, will also probably be a number 1 seed. USC, as mentioned. And I'm going to assume LSU at Angel Reese will probably be the 4th number 1 seed, which was the team that literally got into a fist fight with South Carolina and their star.
Well, I like to brag, and I love Caitlin, but I don't see them pulling out the tourney.
You know, that's the one thing about the women's game. I can't sit here and say that I know enough about it to be able to tell you who the bracket busters are going to be this year. I can give you, I got for the number 1 seeds at least, I got at least 4 or 5 teams right now that I could tell you that'll probably knock these guys out.
Yeah.
The women's side, I am not as educated, so I can't sit there and tell you. However, as legacy, at least in my lifetime, has shown on the women's side of basketball, usually the teams that are really good are the teams that are really good and are going to win. Ergo, like you see the UConn teams of old and their legacy, the Tennessee teams, their legacy. I think really if I had to bet my favorite for the women's side, I'm going to ride with USC, but that's because I'm a fan favorite here. I think the country's favorite is Caitlin Clark. We would all love to see Caitlin go out on top and win a championship and lead her way into the WNBA next year. But I think the betting odds and most likely team to win that side, South Carolina.
Speaking of gambling, I mean, everybody does, the brackets, and it's always the random person that never watched a game that wins. But is it time to bust out a women's bracket?
Ooh.
I'm going to have to talk to Ren Dizzle and see if he can print out some women ones, because I know just as much.
I'd do it.
Well, let's use this to go into the NBA. When we come back, we've got some talk from Shaq Fu and much more right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM.
Welcome back to the Early Bird Special, where we'll be running our show till 9:45, leading you into the SEC championship game between Auburn and Florida, followed by the AAC title game between Temple and UAB, right into Selection Sunday show beginning at 3 p.m. right here on ESPN Bakersfield. Bakersfield, your home for the March Madness tournament. We'll move over to the NBA, and before Burdick just unloads the news this morning, Isaiah Thomas is back in the NBA, and that's not the original Isaiah Thomas for my old men like me, but he'd been playing in the G or D League, whatever the hell it's called now, but signed a 10-day contract with the Suns.
That's you got the music still going, dog.
Yeah. I was listening. I was rocking it out to it. Pantera, baby. Have you ever seen Pantera? Whenever
Live?
You just go offside? Oh, that's a good band to see. That should be on your bucket list. So not only you were telling me during the break that the Lakers were having clock issues.
This is the first I've ever seen this or even heard of this. I wish I watched the game last night.
And it was the first I've heard of a statue being put up with misspelled words, and
yeah,
so they're gonna redo that whole thing and try to fix it. But
they already did, I think.
Did they?
I'm pretty sure they already did.
There was
they did a very hush job on that
morning show this morning, driving in before the sun came up, and they were just ragging on the Lakers.
Yeah, somebody's got to text in or call in and explain this to us, because I am just now catching wind of this. I had a friend send it to me, and I didn't even know it happened. But apparently in the Golden State LA Lakers game, I'm assuming this was last night. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to look that up right now. But there were about 16 minutes of game time eclipsed, but only 15 seconds came off the clock. I'm not sure exactly how that happens. That's pretty much how it's being explained to me, unless somebody can call in or text in and tighten us up on that. But it's a little bizarre. I'm pretty sure that somebody had to look up and think, this is the longest 2 minutes of my life.
Right?
What is happening? We just scored 30 points in 2 minutes, Coach.
Well, we're still April, like 2 months.
2 months before the playoffs. Yeah,
before the playoffs.
We're wrapping it up though, as the boys on inside the NBA like to talk about. But you want to jump into the play-in stuff real quick?
Is that what you want to do?
Let's hear from inside the NBA, because Shaq had an interesting take along with Charles, and we'll get to Charles's next because I kind of believe him or agree with him a little bit more. But this is what Shaq had to say on either the Lakers or the Warriors' chances if they make it out of the play-in.
So I've heard players say, including myself, I feared Mike. I've heard players in your generation say they feared Kobe. I've never really heard any players say they fear LeBron.
And I got killed for that.
Why is that? You're not going to...
What'd you say, Shaq?
No. Inside the NBA. Inside the NBA first. That's the
If they're number one.
Prediction.
What about if they're 2 and they have to play 7?
Well, that's why I said if, dummies.
But what if
Listen to what I'm saying.
What if the matchup is Oklahoma City against either the Lakers or Golden State?
They will lose.
So why does it matter if they're 1-8 or 2-7?
Because if. Listen to me.
You know what? You know what would be fair?
That's
you
why.
know. You know
If
what
it
would be
started
fair?
today, or-
If you said the Lakers or the Warriors, because they're probably going to be in the play-in,
That's what I said.
going to win a series, that
No,
would be.
They can beat the Thunder in the first round.
They will beat the Thunder.
Not can. You got. That's
Will.
not a prediction.
They will beat the Thunder in the first
There
round.
you go.
They can and they will. It is a prediction.
And if it's 1-8 or 2-7.
Whatever.
But you did. But also, you did say at halftime that the Oklahoma City Thunder can and will beat the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, but as you know, it's all about matchups.
Okay.
That's a tough matchup for them. Lakers or the Golden State would be a tough matchup for them.
Yeah,
I-
I totally agree.
Now, to break this down for people who don't really know what the standings look like at the moment, the Thunder are number 1 in the West. The Lakers and the Warriors, I believe the Warriors are number 9 currently in the West, and the Lakers are 10. How the play-in tournament works is that the 9 and 10 seeds would play each other. So as it sits right now, you would have the Warriors against the Lakers. Winner of that would take on the loser of the other play-in game, which is the 7 and 8 seeds, which off the top of my head right now, I'm not sure who that is. Are you looking at it?
Yeah, the 7 and 8 right now in the West is the Kings and Mavericks.
Okay. So assuming that the Mavericks win that, they would probably play the Kings. If the Lakers or the Warriors beat that, then they would be the team to play the number 1 overall seed as the 8 seed, which is the Thunder. I have to agree with Shaq here that I think that both of those teams have a very strong chance at uprooting the Thunder here because the Thunder are a very young team and just don't have that playoff experience that both LeBron and Steph have in their middle fingers.
The one middle thing I would throw out is, say the Lakers do get by the Warriors and somehow the Mavericks, get the win over Sacramento and get lined up with the Nuggets.
Right.
The Lakers have had issues with the Kings, and I could see the Kings being that secret team that that could beat the Lakers. So it's going to be, as I'm looking at the bracket, the winner of the Warriors-Lakers would have to play the loser of the Mavericks and Kings before that winner would play the Thunder.
Yes, that's exactly how it
So
works.
just like last week, I think it was Anthony Davis is 0-10 in his career against
Sabonis.
Yes. So I mean that could be a hell of a game. So I mean, are you a fan of the play-ins personally?
Personally, no. But at the same time, I see why they're trying to do this, and this is going to be a good transition into Barkley's play-in thoughts. So let's hear from Chuck first.
Our sister network on the idiots on the other network keep talking about the Lakers and the Warriors like they got a chance. But listen,
Have a chance to call the play-in.
the play-in is not a real thing, just for the record. That's just something we made up, Shaq. It's just like the CBI tournament. That's what the Lakers and Warriors.
You're already in college basketball. Man, is CBI not
making up stuff.
CBI's not.
They should thank Adam. They should stop. They should thank Adam Silver for making up some stuff. Hey, let's just add a couple teams to the playoffs so the Lakers and Warriors can get in.
So he has a point, but here's the way I differ about this, and this also includes the in-season tournament too. I don't like how people like Talking Heads, specifically Charles, like to complain about how there's no competition in the NBA anymore. Then when they try to do something to create competition in the NBA,
He complains about it.
Exactly.
I personally like the play-in. I mean, most NBA fans, like I'm one of the very few that watch the regular season. A lot of people just will catch the last 5 minutes on, the TNT doubleheaders or whatever. I'm a Bulls fan, so it's been a rough season, just like the last decade. But just like the Lakers and Warriors, if it wasn't for the play-in, the Bulls wouldn't have a chance. And if you don't remember, I believe it was a year or maybe two when the Heat, came out of that play-in and made a strong push into the playoffs. So, I mean, it's just like any sport who can stay healthy at the right time. And, obviously with the injuries with Joel, that hurt the Sixers. If they can get into the play-in and Joel gets back, I mean, that is a team to watch.
Well, I kind of compare the play-in to the wild card in the NFL. I think that the extra couple games gives teams like this that are at the bottom of the barrel the momentum that they need to catch up to these bigger teams. And I think that it's a great way to give them a chance to get into the tournament or get into the playoffs. I think, though, that in the in the NBA's case, there's a better way to go about this. And I think there's a better way to also do the in-season tournament. Why don't we, instead of an all-star weekend, wipe the all-star weekend, put the in-season tournament there, or a little bit before it, like somewhere in January, maybe late December, around Christmas time. You make that actually mean something. Ergo, the winner of the in-season tournament would get an automatic bid in the playoffs, regardless of what. Well, yeah, if you're too low, so say like the Pacers were when the in-season tournament happened. Now the Pacers are in at like the 4 or 5 seed, something like that. But at the time, the Pacers were not a playoff team. And actually, and that's another indicator, too, that you could say that the in-season tournament actually did something positive because it gave the Pacers some sort of hope to play for because Halliburton played out of his mind. But if you give some substance to the competition in the NBA, I feel like you'll get some of these these older heads actually backing it a little bit more because you give meaning to it. I see why Charles would be upset with the play-in. I don't see why you have to complain about it like that, though. You just made something up. Guess what, Chuck? The 8-team playoff bracket was also something the NBA made up one day. Mm-hmm. The all 7-game runs was something the NBA made up in the 2000s to give it more substance. Also, a reason why Mike didn't see a lot of Game 7s, but we don't talk about that.
I mean, I'm excited for the NBA playoffs. I know it's still a while away, but that's when you kind of see, like, I'm looking for. I mean, I could look through the bracket right now, and I've got a circle on Milwaukee. How's Doc and Giannis going to play in the playoffs? They're sitting at number 2. The Celtics clinched a playoff spot last week. I'm pushing for Coach Thibodeau with the Knicks. As of right now, they would play the Magic. Going back to the Pacers, if the playoffs were now, they would be playing your boys in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good matchups, and if we can get a play-in matchup in the play-in with the Lakers and Warriors, and the Bulls and Hawks, I'll be watching.
Well, I mean, and that's the other thing that you get with this type of thing is when you have teams like the Lakers and the Warriors in a win or go home situation. The game's always entertaining, always. And I'd argue that it's actually a better situation with the Lakers and Warriors down in the play-in this year because you're actually going to watch it, like you just said. Now, mind you, it's only one game, but say the Lakers win. Say the Lakers knock out the Warriors and everybody's like, oh, there goes LeBron making his push in the playoffs again. And then again, he has an uphill battle against the Kings, whom he's had to deal with Anthony Davis being 0-10 against Sabonis the entire time. That is going to make you want to watch the game.
Yeah, and if they get lucky and get to the Thunder, that'd be a hell of a series.
It's the young guns against LeBron James and the team that won a championship back in COVID. Like it happens. It creates these storylines that create buzz around the sport, which NBA needs very, very bad right now. But they need to incorporate it into the regular season more than into the postseason. But when it comes to the arguments about the play-in, I'm sorry, Chuck, but you're going to have to get used to it. It's not going anywhere. The in-season tournament might, but this definitely is not going anywhere.
Well, we'll take our last break for the first hour, and we will be back in the second hour. Like I had mentioned, we're live until 9:45 this morning. We'll definitely get into the NFL, if not this next segment in the second hour. Right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 1230 AM.
101.1 FM.
Welcome back to the Early Bird Special as we wrap up hour number 1 talking NBA. And there was a clip that we got into last week. Do you want to cover that or you want to hear hear Shaq first.
No. Let's get to the Gilbert clip we didn't get to talk about last week because they both are kind of the same anyway. So let's just start with Gilbert.
Overrated. The 90s? Oh, so are we on the 90s now?
He on the 90s. You know, he
on
can't
the
wait.
90s
He
now?
said the 90s is overrated.
We got enough beef, dude.
Okay.
So does that? Are you discrediting Michael?
Where the defense at? Y'all talking about defense? This is defensive juggernauts and stuff like. I want where that. They couldn't stop nobody. There was no crossovers like that. They couldn't move left or right for nothing. They fouled hard,
Okay.
but they didn't stop nobody from driving.
Okay.
I'm gonna just throw it out there. Maybe the defense looked good because there was no offensive players on the floor. Back then, they only had 1.5 scores. Everybody else was defensive players, so obviously they couldn't shoot. Nobody even gonna say that they changed the three-point line. They went from 24 feet to 22 because they couldn't shoot the ball. They couldn't. No, y'all don't want to say that.
Right.
Y'all couldn't shoot the ball for nothing, so they changed. They had to push it. They had to push it in.
Yeah.
Jordan's shooting percentage went up 10% because of that new line.
That's crazy.
30% to 40%, just because of the new line.
So we didn't get to talk about this much last week because we started this at the end of the segment about this time, but you got to watch all the 90s and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on this?
I think it was a whole different sport.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole different league, just like the NFL. I mean, the younger players will, have a way to pick and choose what, was different. There wasn't as many fouls at that time as well, so maybe you call it no defense.
Well, hold on. Let's specify on that because there were fouls happening, but they just weren't
not
called.
Yeah.
But
it's not as. I mean, they
let them play a little.
The
bit
Attitude Era kind of. Maybe it wasn't no defense, but each team, like I wrapped up the show last week, there was defense, but each team had their defensive stud. Whether it was David Robinson with the Spurs or, Rodman with whether it was Detroit or, but those old days, the big centers, the Mutombos, there was defense, but I could see both sides of it. Well, as a basketball fan, I see both sides, what he's talking about. But, I mean, if you're going to go with the three-point thing, it wasn't a three-point league.
No, not even close back then. No one was shooting threes back then.
And I wouldn't say it was because they couldn't shoot. It just like the big mans that each team had, they had their shooters.
Yeah.
The Mark Prices, the Larry Birds or whatever, I can go down a list. Even in the late 90s, where Shaq was with the Magic, they had the Dennis Scott over there in the corner. So, I mean, I could see both sides, but if you're going to take the three-point line and use that as your main
well, I don't know
staple.
if that was his main staple. I think that's just one of the points that he made. But I see Gilbert's point, but I'd also argue that the league has never had this many stars in it, ever. Every team's got at least one or two. At least. And that's kind of, I think, the point that he was trying to make is that I don't think the defense laterally was what it is now.
No, probably. You're probably right.
I think that's more the point that he was trying to make was in a sense of defensive juggernauts and whatnot that these guys were talked about. And like, it's kind of like listening to your dad talk about his high school days.
Exactly. Or football.
Exactly. Like
back
he was
in my
a
day.
god, man. He was Thor walking the earth, like we get it, dog. But I think it's like, as you said, the game is different. It's always different. And now, mind you, he's not talking about Michael like that.
Yeah.
Gilbert will be the first to probably tell you that Mike is a GOAT. And I think, before we get to the end, do we have time for this one?
Yeah.
Do we? Let's roll it. Because Shaq made a very good point about why Michael will always be above LeBron in this sense.
So I've heard players say, including myself, I feared Mike. I've heard players in your generation say they feared Kobe. I've never really heard any players say they fear LeBron.
And I got killed for that.
Why is that? You're not going to get killed here. I'm just
saying, when I first said that, people killed me for that.
I'm with you.
I didn't think players really feared LeBron.
And he's got a point. But that's kind of the difference you have in this game compared to the old school game. You feared that star back then. You don't fear the star anymore in this one because you got your own.
Yeah, and then, just playing basketball for 20 years, the league has changed. Defensive schemes have changed. It's more aggressive.
Absolutely.
And we'll definitely use this next hour to talk NFL. We've got plenty to talk about Text in anytime, 661-842-2000, right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 1230 a.m.
101.1 FM.
Happy St. Patrick's Day as we start hour number 2 on the Early Bird Special.
You know what's criminal? It's St. Patrick's Day, and NBA is not airing the Celtics game.
Really? That's
criminal.
Maybe because they clinched the playoffs already?
I mean, that's possible, but it's the Celtics. I'm not even a Celtics fan, but it's Irish. Come on now.
Right?
It's that in Chicago.
Yeah.
You got to play a Chicago game.
Well, I caught a Bulls game this last week. I was all excited. They were playing the Clippers, and that game was over in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And it's just...
And real quick, just to mention these, a lot of these clips that we have from this week, just to chime in, are from some of these guys' podcasts. I know Gilbert's is from his podcast from 2 weeks ago, and Shaq's is from the Big Podcast as well. And personally, if you're not catching up on these, there's a lot of great conversations that these guys have been having about these type of stuff, or about this type of stuff, and really just talking points that fans would love to hear. So just wanted to shout those out and make sure that everyone knew that we weren't just pulling off of other people's stuff.
Well, we are the Early Bird Special, and we're in our second hour just because ESPN Bakersfield will have the big SEC championship game between Auburn and Florida later today, followed by Temple and UAB rolling into Selection Sunday show beginning at 3 p.m. I mean, there is so much we could talk about with the NFL, and we got a long segment right here, so we can jump into, off-season grades so far. We can go into each team or division, but the big pickups. And, I'm just going to go off script. And, Aaron Donald announced his retirement a few days ago.
Yup.
And,
let's start with that.
It wasn't a big surprise.
No.
I would say, because, he's kind of been hitting it for, at least a couple years. And I know a couple Rams fans that were kind of pissed that they didn't know that before the free agency started. But I'm sure they did know. I mean, we've kind of all just kind of been tinkering, and with, Kelsey and Fletcher Cox retiring from Philly, it wasn't that big of a deal. But I'm going to go with Booger McFarland talking about Aaron Donald's retirement.
I was a little shocked, even though he had hinted at it a couple of years ago. You could tell that, I'm not going to say the game was becoming boring, but he had done everything that you can do in the game. I mean, he was dominating week in and week out. And at some point, because of the violence of the position, how violent this game is, he's amassed all the awards. He's made a ton of money. At some point, you have to have motivation to continue to play. So anytime you hear a player start thinking about retirement, usually retirement is not far off.
Exactly. 100%.
They had to coerce him to come back, and I say that it really wasn't that bad, but they did have to convince him a couple years ago not to retire when he was like 30.
Yeah, when he was on the fence already.
Yes. So we knew this was coming, and arguably, now, this has to be the biggest. It was Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox, for sure, but this now is the biggest retirement of the year. And I don't know about you, but Aaron Donald, to me, is probably the most dominant defensive player since Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, you nailed it right on.
3 or 4 guys on him 24/7, and this is as a D tackle. I know he was listed as a D end, but we all know Aaron was a D tackle. He was inside, man. He made every offense worry about him. And going out at the age of 32, 33, just like JJ said he was going to retire early, and he did. You're going to see this a lot more in the NFL, man. I'm telling you, these guys, they see the longevity of it. They see what happens when you play into your 40s. It's not good. There's no amount of money that makes it good, and they make enough now where it doesn't really matter anymore. You can get your money and move on early in your career. So I applaud him for doing this. Save your body, man. Go do what you want to do. I know a lot of people are talking about him. I know Ian Rappaport was saying he wants him to become an action movie star out there.
He can do it.
He absolutely could. He's young enough. He's in great shape. The man already trains with knives.
I was going to say, I can also see him, making some appearances on WWE.
I could see that. I think that's more George Kittle's thing than
and the polls. But another thing that was, I'm going off script, but before we go into the suicide watch and the Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, and one of the bigger news stories this week. Beginning so what was it called? Teams could start talking to agents as of Monday,
right? And
then the free agency actual title opened Wednesday,
right?
So I'm not going to get into the tampering because the tampering crap happens
every year,
all year, unless you're the stupid ass Dolphins and you take a player that's on a team under contract and put him on a boat or a yacht with your team owner and try to, fluid where Tom Brady was going to come to Miami, and thank God that didn't happen. Everyone's tampering.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. And what did you guys lose for that?
First round pick.
You lost a first rounder?
Yeah, and which we already had traded for one, so we still had one. But it was still a first round draft pick.
Okay. Let since we're on this topic, in at least Saquon's area, well, actually both area, really, we have to take into account Saquon Barkley and Kirk Cousins are the two in question at the moment. Saquon Barkley went to Penn State and has multiple Pennsylvania connections. And actually, I have a clip of that, so we might as well play it now. It's one of the McAfee clips. You see it in there?
Which one? There's a bunch of them.
It's McAfee, should not have a number on it. This is from the Pat McAfee show earlier this week, where they talked about the signing with Saquon Barkley and his connections in Philadelphia.
It was kind of lingering around the internet that Saquon and the Philadelphia Eagles were dancing. I think Saquon went to high school in Pennsylvania. He also went to Penn State. Yep. A lot of Philly people. I would assume the connections were easy to potentially be drawn there. But he will join Sirianni. Swift ends up as a Chicago Bear, the running back for the Eagles last year. And now Saquon Barkley, a man who a lot of people say was one of the only bright sides for the Giants for a few years, is in a new team with a new check. And hopefully a new culture taking place in Philadelphia, even though they won a Super Bowl just a couple years ago.
That was a hell of a pickup.
It is. It's probably the biggest pickup of the year, in my opinion. I think Philly is going to be huge, dude. Like I think it's going to be way bigger than people think.
I thought it was going to be Dallas, which...
Okay, but that being said, because I heard Derrick Henry to Dallas, because Derrick has a house in Dallas and all that type of stuff, so Dallas fans went crazy when they figured out he was on the market. Would this have been an equally as big move if he chose Dallas over Philly?
It would be, just because Dallas is, just in the league as America's team. And
is this more on the area of Saquon just saying, I'm picking the team best for me, or are they looking at it as a sense of Kevin Durant joining the Warriors? Because Philadelphia is a Super Bowl winning team and has been, and then had an off year.
Yeah.
So this mirrors the Warriors thing very well.
Well, I saw, just kind of like what Pat just said. He has more tie-ins to Philly. I think how they ran the running game last year kind of hurt the team. And not only just the offensive play calling, but, Swift was a hell of a back.
Yep.
But he isn't the heavy load type running back. They were kind of soft with him. They were kind of slow with him. They swapped him out a lot. I think Barkley is a perfect fit for Philly.
I think so too. I think he fits that mold very well. But the point what we're getting at here is the connections with Philadelphia obviously were going to sway his entire idea of where he ended up. Tampering in this area. And Kirk can be the same thing, because Kirk Cousins lives in Atlanta on the offseason. That's where his family lives. So Kirk obviously was going to consider the Atlanta Falcons, knowing their quarterback situation and all that type of stuff. So, and we'll get on Kirk's contract later.
We'll get into that too, but I also want to use this to swap over the other big deal. As the first few days of free agency started, all these quarterbacks were going, running backs were getting picked up, which I enjoyed, because, running backs weren't getting any love last year.
Right.
This time last year, running backs were having a Zoom call with each other, trying to see, how do we get back into the market.
Fair.
And the first, 24 hours of free agency, running backs, they were everywhere, jumping around and getting paid. Like the one Mixon.
Yes.
Mixon he had a 1 year left in Cincy, and as soon as he signed, he got a 3-year extension, which I believe Houston is going to be a beautiful pickup.
Especially if they end up getting Bakhtardi to actually sign with them. It's going to be huge. But I still say don't rule out a Jets reunion there, because the Jets could use him at right tackle as well, or move Tyron to right tackle. You never know. But I would agree with that. I love seeing running backs getting their due. I'd argue, though, that the running back pool this year is much deeper.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, you could argue that Josh and Saquon were both in the market last year because of their franchise tags, but you have guys like Derrick Henry also in the mix this year. You had guys like Austin Eckler in the mix this year. The amount of star-studded running backs.
Yes. I mean, there was a lot of them.
Every team that was looking for a new running back saw what they could see this year, and I think that's why you saw the stinginess last year.
Yeah.
You saw that, hey.
Well, they knew we were coming next year.
Exactly. The teams that will pay you will, but you got to let go of the team that already has you. Ergo, Derrick Henry was one of the big names that everybody was looking at last year and said, hey, if we just wait a year, we can get the most dominant running back in the NFL, arguably. The biggest guy in the market.
Yeah.
I know that's why Dallas waited. Unfortunately, it didn't work out in Dallas's favor. He ended up choosing the Baltimore Ravens instead, which is going to be the scariest backfield all season long. I'm sorry if you were a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but you're going to be hurting all year. And you can argue Cincinnati as well, because they've lost a lot of pieces too.
Oh, yeah. And Buffalo.
Yeah. So the Ravens are looking to reload, and I know they just dropped OBJ, but don't be surprised. They're going to draft somebody.
Oh, yeah. And then I saw, Houston has kind of been the sneaky, and even, the Commanders, which we'll get into more free agency signings. But the other trade in the last, 48 hours was the Bears finally getting rid of Fields when it didn't look like there was much of market. But Heather Cronin from ESPN was talking about the better options that the Bears could have got.
From what I was told, my reporting, 5 other teams other than Pittsburgh had reached out about Justin Fields in a variety of roles, but most of those roles were for him to come in as a backup. And that's what he's going to be in Pittsburgh for now. Russ is there for 1 year. Who knows if this year goes great and he wants to continue playing. We heard what he said, that he wants to win 2 Super Bowls in the next 5 years. Maybe he ends up coming back for 2025. But if he doesn't, you've got Justin Fields right there, and you can give him his chance to become a starter again. I don't think he's done in the NFL as a starting quarterback. I think that in the right place where he has time.
I think, speaking of this, Pittsburgh, that was a big question mark with their quarterback room last year, and with how the Broncos just horribly dealt with the trade to get Russell Wilson, and now they're on the line to pay Russell a ton of money, and they get him for the minimum value for a vet, and then able to trade for Justin Fields, which was a 6th-round pick. But if he plays 51% of the snaps in the offense,
it jumps to a 4th rounder.
It jumps to a 4th rounder, which is a hell of a steal. And it's funny is that, Fields is on his rookie deal still, and they're paying more for his backup, but the backup is Justin Fields. So, I mean, I know I've read a lot about Fields over the last couple of weeks. I was a fan of him, in college, but the guy's had problems reading defenses. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, there's a reason why these quarterbacks are getting picked in the beginning of drafts, because the teams are bad. Mm-hmm. So I think, Fields I'm not going to bag on the Bears or bag on Fields, but it was just a matchup that wasn't going to work.
Right. Absolutely.
So I believe he gets a fresh start. He gets to back up under Russell Wilson, that is not the – I mean, he is a similar type quarterback, but he's going to learn from Russ. I don't see Russ staying for an extra year in Pittsburgh. And what on paper – the Steelers can pick up that 5th-year option on Fields next year, and they'll have plenty of cap room. But that's the question: is are they going to use him more of a like some of these teams do with 2 quarterbacks, or are they just going to let him hold the clipboard this year?
Well, you got Arthur Smith in there as your offensive coordinator now, which actually bodes very well for Justin, because Arthur loves a running quarterback. A lot of his offense is based around the running quarterback, which is why Russell really worked as well. Personally, for me, this is the Pittsburgh Steelers' contingency plan. They really planned to keep Kenny, I think was the original plan.
Yeah.
Was to sit there and say, Kenny, you're going to sit here, you're going to compete with Russ for the starting spot. There were reports that said Russ even reached out to Kenny when he signed, saying how much he looked forward to competing with him every day. And Kenny said, nah, I'm out. And that's when they traded him to Philly, and that's, the way it went. So Pittsburgh now seeing it as you are, we don't know what's happening after Russ after this 1 year, whether Russ does well or not. We have no idea. We could be getting a dud. We could be getting the stud that played in Seattle. We have no idea. So what they did is they traded for the other maybe starter, which is Justin Fields. And I do agree with you that this was probably the best spot for him after Atlanta said no. Personally, I actually was kind of debating. I was kind of thinking about it as well, that Atlanta could still make a move for him, especially after moving on from Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
I thought possibly they could still make a move and just keep him as a backup, doing what Pittsburgh's doing right now, but with Kirk instead. But I think that this is going to really come down to what you get out of Justin, because I don't think Chicago did Justin any favors.
No.
They really didn't. And if I'm Justin Fields, I am irritated as heck that they are rolling out the red carpet for Caleb, getting him all these weapons and stuff. But I will also argue what I've argued all week. A receiver that's not going to block for you is not going to help in Chicago's case. Your problem was not your star, or was not your skill players. You had young studs that actually looked decent. Your problem was your offensive line that you still have yet to fix. Now, granted, they have the number 9 overall pick as well, which will most likely end up in, I would say, the number 1 or 2 tackles in this draft. Whether that guy works out or not, we have no idea, because this is not really the strongest offensive line draft we've seen in a while.
Yeah.
So, if I'm Justin, I'm not only thankful to get out of a toxic situation that is Chicago, but I'm also kind of livid that after all of this struggling that you put me through, you went and traded for Keenan Allen. You went and picked up DeAndre Swift. You went and got all these big pieces for this kid that everybody in your organization doesn't want you to take. And also, I'm going to go out and say, if you're somebody saying Caleb Williams is too much of a diva, you need to calm down.
I was just going to use that to use. I have a couple Bears fans. One of us is a sponsor, Kyle Jones. But they said, what kind of USC quarterbacks have had any success? So I looked over the 10 best, and this is from Adam Schefter, the 10 best USC quarterbacks, starting with Rob Johnson at 10, Todd Marin. I always had this guy with the Raiders, Todd Marinovich.
Which is criminal to put him in this list, exactly. To be honest with you.
Matt Leonard, Mark Sanchez, which I figured he would be higher.
Much higher.
Vince Evans at 6, Sam Darnold at 5.
I don't see how Darnold is even higher than Mark Sanchez, but okay.
Paul McDonald at 4, Pat Hayden at 3, John David Booty at
I knew that name was going to
2.
come up.
I don't see how the hell he's at 2. And then number 1 is Carson Palmer.
Far be it for me to correct Adam Schefter of all people. That man knows more about this sport than I ever will and is in more connections than I will ever know. But really? We're going to put John David Booty and Sam Darnold over, and I hate to say this, but Mark Sanchez is as much of a joke as he was at the end of his career with the butt fumble and all that type of stuff. He helped lead the Jets to 2 back-to-back, actually almost, I think it was 3 back-to-back AFC championship
Those are the Rex
games.
Ryan days, right?
Yes. Now, granted, they lost them all to Tom Brady, but that is more success than Sam Darnold has ever seen, and John David Booty put together. So I'd have to disagree with that. But USC quarterbacks, fair, do not have a longevity situation in the NFL at all outside of Carson Palmer. I would argue, though, that Caleb is more of an Oklahoma quarterback than he was a USC quarterback. He was only at USC for a year. And 2, I also would say that none of those quarterbacks have had the raw talent and skill that Caleb has. And that is what you're getting, in my personal opinion, regardless of how much of a diva he is. Whoever picks this kid up is going to get a star quarterback for at least the first 10 years of his career.
Well, we'll wrap up this segment, come back and talk Kirk Cousins. Roy is right. Text in anytime, 661-842-2000. And if you missed the show or past shows, the podcast, The Early Bird Special, is now available on YouTube, all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Core. We're everywhere. Right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 1230 a.m.
101.1 FM.
And welcome back to The Early Bird Special, St. Patty's Day episode.
This is the type of stuff I'm going to be listening to all day.
You do the green beer?
Well, not necessarily. I'm a Guinness guy, so I'm going to go pick up probably a 4-pack of Guinness for myself. Just chill, play some video games, maybe go hang out with a friend. Or, we'll see what happens.
Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan's back.
I was just looking at this thing. Kirk Cousins. How do you really feel?
Okay. I wish I would have actually did a video and put it on our Instagram. I should have done that, to be honest with you, because it probably would have been more entertaining than this. I have since calmed down. Okay. When this signing happened on Wednesday, quote unquote, Monday, I am not happy with this. I do not like this. This is not the move for Atlanta that I think is going to work.
Who would you rather have?
I don't know. That's my only question. To be honest, again, I said this on Greg Kerr's show. In a perfect world, somehow Atlanta would have convinced Chicago to give him the number 1. Trade away your first rounders for the next couple of years. Do something. I don't care. You end up with Caleb. That was my dream scenario. Never was going to happen in a million years, though. We all know it, so it is what it is. And I realized that Kirk Cousins was the best quarterback available. That is not a question. That is for absolutely 110% factual. And I've been saying it on this show for weeks that I didn't even want to put that in the air because I just didn't want it. And I'll explain why. Kirk Cousins, since everyone seems to have forgotten. Actually, you know what? Oh, I didn't keep this clip. Otherwise, it would have been different. I had one from Stephen A. as well, him breaking down his past teammates. But you know what? Let's just go to Stephen A. because I think he said it beautifully on his show on Tuesday after this signing was said out and put out into the universe. So let's hear what Stephen A. had to say.
Can we calm down? I mean, just a touch. And then Booger gonna come out here. I mean, it's a really big deal, relocating his family. Didn't Adam Schefter tell us that didn't Adam Schefter tell us that the family is in the Atlanta area? The family of the wives. They ain't in Minnesota. He going home. That's like me sitting there going like this. Man, Shannon's really stepping out there going to Atlanta, man. Shannon's really, that's really a big deal for Shannon to be going to Atlanta. I mean, that's a second home for that brother. What you talking about? That's not a big deal. Now, if the brother was sitting up there and he was in Atlanta and went someplace like Minnesota, that would be a little bit different. That's not the case here. The brother going home for a raise, getting additional money that he wasn't expecting to get him, an additional year that he wasn't expecting to get, and he got one player victory to show for it in the last 6 years. Can we calm down? That's all I'm saying. I know he can play. I know it's an upgrade. I know if you Pitts, I know if you Bijan Robinson and the crew, I know if you London and those boys, you should be happy. I got it. I understand he's not a scrub, but this guy got one. He got less player victories than Dak Prescott.
Ouch.
I'm just saying, look, he said it perfectly. I don't even need to mimic a dang word. He got more money than he deserves.
Man, whoever his agent is,
that's actually going to be my next point. So hold on here, because you're moving past me. But trust me, I'm on the same track as you. Now, this man is not a scrub. He's a great player. I will not deny that. This man statistically is probably going to go down as one of the better quarterbacks in NFL history, especially given what he had. I mean, look at how he came into the league. He came in as a backup to RG3, drafted in the same year, mind you, so let's not forget that. But I think in general, this just isn't going to fit. I think the Dak Prescott comparison is accurate. If Atlanta would have traded for Dak Prescott, I'd be equally as upset. What are we doing? You're not getting a proven commodity. This isn't signing Tom Brady. You just signed a guy at the same age, 36, as Matt Ryan. When you got rid of him, wouldn't give him this money.
No.
But you gave him $180 million for 4 years. This man has won one playoff game, and let me remind you, it's the one that we have in our opening called the Minnesota Miracle. Do we remember how the Minnesota Miracle ended? And actually, no, I'm sorry. That wasn't even him. That was Case Keenum. I apologize. So that wasn't him. I won't even give him credit for that. Pretty sure that was Case Keenum. But regardless, Atlanta, not smart with the deal at least. If this was something like Russell Wilson where you got him for 1-2 years, okay, I'll deal with it for 1 or 2 years. But you signed a long-term contract with a 36-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles tear for $180 million. And I'd argue we needed that money for more players than just a quarterback, but you just said, nah, we're going to give all of it to one guy. But jumping over to where you were talking about, let's get with McAfee here. We'll hit number 2, talking about Kirk Cousins and his agent and how they just beautifully sold his client. Let's hear it.
Kirk Cousins and Mike McCartney are dogs, okay, at the negotiation table. I love Mulugeta. Mulugeta's got the biggest guaranteed contract in the history of the NFL, and it'll be the biggest guaranteed contract in the history of the NFL for a long time. Mulugeta is an absolute beast. But what Kirk Cousins and McCartney have been doing for a long time now, taking these guaranteed contracts, and Kirk Cousins playing at the level he's playing, showcasing that he can still get better, he can come be your stopgap guy, and he could be your guy to maybe get you to your next guy, or he could be your guy. Like, I think the Vikings thought they were maybe going to win a Super Bowl. Atlanta Falcons are paying him to do the same damn thing.
Yeah.
They are. But here's the thing. Matt Ryan at least got you to a Super Bowl. Matt Ryan was a proven commodity, and you couldn't pay him this money. But you're going to pay somebody that's not a proven commodity, that has not made anywhere close or even sniffed the Super Bowl, let alone won a prime time game. Did we all forget Kirk's entire MO in Minnesota and in Washington? Same as Andy Dalton. Can't win a Monday night game. Can't win a Sunday night game. Can't win a Thursday night game. Why are we talking about this signing as if Atlanta just became the biggest dog? Like, knock it off. I am an Atlanta Falcons fan. I'm not happy about this. I know most of Atlanta at the time of this signing or the announcement of it was not happy. So much so the social media team posted a picture of the Atlanta PD's hotspot readings of the city. Holy crap. Pardon my language. But I'm telling you, dude, this is not going to be what Atlanta, or at least the front office, thinks it's going to be. This will not get them anywhere closer. And I'm, as a fan, because look.
And why are they in the draft?
We're number 8.
Okay.
Number 8. So they'll end up, I think, with an edge rusher, which they desperately need. I hope is the kid from Alabama, Turner, because he's an absolute stud. But I digress.
They also lost a cornerback, right?
Yes. Jeff Okudah, unfortunately, is no longer with the team. He signed with, oh, Lord. I know I saw that, but I can't remember who it was. It was a 1-year deal. But that's my point, though. They went out and signed all of these receivers, which was great. We needed the help around Drake London, and we needed speed around Drake London, which is something that we have not had in a while. And with Mooney and Rondale Moore, the trade you did with Arizona, that's going to fit those spots. Absolutely. Kyle Pitts now gets to actually play tight end, lo and behold. And
now that Johnny's gone.
Yes, now that Johnny's gone. And honestly, I loved the dialogue that Kirk did say at the presser between him and Kyle Pitts. Kyle just said, I'll give you the number, just target me.
Yes. They said that was the only guy
that was the only, he didn't want money.
I want targets every game.
Every game. And you know what? I'm all for it. And if I don't care if he comes out and throws to Kyle 15 times a game, do it. I don't care. But again, I'm not happy about the move. I don't think this was a smart move, especially long-term wise, and I can't see it working out the way Atlanta thinks it's going to. I just don't. But as somebody, I am fed up. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be openly cheering for this team this year, no matter how good we do. I'm sorry. I'm not.
I'll go to the final clip.
He doesn't around either.
No.
We're getting $100 million guaranteed if we're coming down there. And they're like, well, I don't know if we want to do that. He's like, all right, well, we'll just go get that somewhere else, and then immediately it's a deal done. Why doesn't everybody do what Kirk Cousins does? Why doesn't everybody do what Mike McCarthy does? And congratulations to them, business-wise, getting another massive payday. But also, Kirk Cousins is a beast on the field. There's a reason why they can do this, and he bets on himself more than most people.
Yeah.
He did franchise tag, 2 year. Like, he'll bet on himself, and he has hit every single time. A little bit of a nerd, but an absolute dog. And I have nothing but respect for him, and congrats to the Falcons getting a deal done.
I was going to say the same thing. I've got mad respect for Kirk Cousins. I know they overpaid.
Absolutely.
I think it is an upgrade. I didn't expect them to get rid of Ritter. I thought he could have won, but it was give or take. It wasn't going to break the team. But like you said, they brought in Mooney. They brought in Moore. I still think
you just vastly overpaid for a man you didn't need to, which is going to hurt you in the long run of this. Ritter was out, though.
Yeah.
I tell you right now, the franchise.
Who's the other backup?
Tyler Heineke.
Okay, that's
Heineke will most likely continue to be the backup this year. But again, it's going to be Kirk Cousins' the show. We will see how it goes, and with a new offensive coordinator and Zach Robinson. I'm sorry.
I was like, damn, that would have been cool.
No, it's not Zach. No, it's going to work out for Kirk, I think, in a sense of it's going to be the offense he wants, which is going to work. But they'll make the playoffs. Probably the best team in the NFC South to make the playoffs, but you're not gonna sniff the Super Bowl with this move. This isn't gonna make
since we've only gone through 1 week of free agency, I'll do my best next week to break down some of these grades and see what's still available. I know a couple players just offhand, Xavier Howard,
right?
A couple guys that are still out there. I'm not sure, where did Pollard go?
Pollard's in Tennessee,
and that was another one. But I was looking over some of the NFL grades through 1 week of offseason or free agency, and the Falcons, they rated Falcons as an A.
This is the first time I've actually seen any love from the media, too, when it comes to the Falcons. I just want to point that out.
The other one was I was going to bounce off you. What do you think about the Derrick Henry to Baltimore? Because that's another team that they've graded A so far.
Scariest pickup. I think, again, between Philadelphia picking up Saquon and Baltimore picking up Derrick, those are going to be my two biggest key pickups this year.
I mean, they lost a couple defensive staples like Patrick Queen that went right over into the division with Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
but
you already had a guy in Raekwon Smith that was just as good, if not better, than Patrick Queen. Now, granted, you wanted to keep the two together, but you could find somebody that could potentially fill that role.
And the other one, the other team that's been as an A so far in free agency is the Packers, which I'm going to give some love with Jordan Love. I love the pickup with Josh Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
I think, getting another year.
We sleep on Josh Jacobs, but he was the NFL leading rusher a couple years ago. Let's not forget.
And that was another thing. I wish I would have got the clip, but
he's only 28, right?
They always call players like him, oh, you're a traitor.
Yeah.
And he brought up a good point saying, it's not always the player. I wanted to be in Vegas.
If they really wanted you, they would have paid you.
And they wouldn't have tagged you last year.
They paid your boy Wilkins from Miami $100K.
Yeah.
Or $100 million. I'm sorry, $100K. $100 million. They could have paid Josh.
Yeah.
Don't pretend like you couldn't.
If they really wanted him. The only other A I saw was Philadelphia.
Yeah, which obviously we've talked about the Saquon pickup. And actually, they sneaked out a couple other big ones because Devin White, the Tampa Bay linebacker, linebacker, he's headed to Philly. Gardner Johnson's headed back to Philly. I'm telling you, Philadelphia, although making some moves, losing Kevin Baird and obviously Fletcher Cox and Jason being gone now,
picking
retired.
Up Bryce Huff.
Picking up Bryce Huff's going to make it up for it, dude. I'm telling you, Philly's going to be scary next year, if not just as scary as last year. But they just need to keep themselves together as a unit. Whatever the heck happened at the second half of last year to cause this spiral, you got to nip that in the butt and figure it out, man.
And I'm still super surprised that the Bears kept their coach, but I kind of saw that once.
When they said Fields was gone, yeah, then they knew that the head coach wouldn't go nowhere. But the same offer this year, if they underperform, especially if you draft Caleb and you're still at like 7-10, you're most likely that you're gone probably halfway through the year. I doubt he makes it full year.
And what do you think about the Chiefs picking up Hollywood?
That's going to be huge.
You think it is?
That's going to be a great pickup for him. Hollywood's got speed. He loves the deep routes. And, him and Lamar had a solid chemistry when it came to deep route throwing. And there's no better deep thrower than Patrick Mahomes, man.
And I know losing Willie Gay at linebacker, he was a staple for their defense. But it's still the Chiefs. So do you think on paper,
the bigger pickup was Chase was Jones, but biggest paper on right now is I'd probably say Saquon. Okay. Saquon to Philly, I'd say is going to be the biggest impact.
Well, join us next week where we'll definitely dive right into NFL free agency and grades and what we expect out of our own team right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM.